Something is happening across America, quietly, steadily, almost invisibly. But once you see it, you realize it is one of the most significant social shifts of the 21st century. It is the sight of Black families, from Chicago to New York, from Los Angeles to Philadelphia, quietly packing up their lives and leaving the cities their ancestors helped build. No special news coverage, no dramatic government announcement, no national headline. Just rental trucks, long highways, and families on the move, leaving behind the places they once called home. Black Americans are leaving major U.S. cities at the highest rate in more than half a century. Why? What changed? And what does this mean for the future of America? A shocking truth. History is reversing itself. For nearly 100 years, Black Americans moved into major cities. They fled violence, segregation, Jim Crow, poverty, lack of opportunity. But now, they're moving in the opposite direction, from north to south, from west coast to the southeast, from giant urban centers to warmer, more affordable, more promising cities. Researchers now call this the Great Reverse Migration. And make no mistake, this is a historic transformation. How big is this shift? Consider this. Chicago has lost hundreds of thousands of Black residents in just a decade. Los Angeles and San Francisco have lost nearly 1/3 of their Black populations in 20 years. New York, once the epicenter of Black culture, is experiencing the largest shift since the 1970s. Meanwhile, Atlanta is becoming a new Black capital. Houston and Dallas are exploding with Black middle-class growth. Charlotte, Raleigh, and Orlando are growing so fast that local governments are struggling to expand infrastructure in time. This isn't a lifestyle trend. This is a redrawing of the Black American map. Why are they leaving? It's not just affordability, not just crime, not just opportunity. It's a stacked combination of pressures. Housing costs skyrocketing, gentrification pushing Black families out, declining school quality, vanishing traditional jobs, rising psychological stress, and a growing sense of this city is no longer for us. And equally important, the South has transformed, offering opportunity, comfort, and cultural belonging like never before. Why is this migration so shocking? Because it flips history upside down. In the 20th century, Black Americans fled the South seeking freedom. Today, they're leaving major cities seeking a different kind of freedom. Financial freedom, mental freedom, community belonging, space to build a future, and freedom from the daily grind of urban survival mode. As one family put it, in Chicago, we live to survive. In Atlanta, we live to grow. That single sentence explains everything. This is a story rarely spoken but widely felt. This quiet exodus is visible in empty apartments. Once vibrant neighborhoods now hollowed out, churches losing longtime congregations, schools shrinking in enrollment, Black-owned restaurants and shops closing. Black Americans are not leaving because they want to abandon their cities. They are leaving because they feel pushed out, and at the same time, pulled toward a rapidly rising South. Why is the South becoming the new land of possibility? Because of lower housing costs, job growth, the rise of the Black middle class, strong cultural communities, renewed Black political influence, and a sense of familiarity and belonging. This is not just a shift in geography. It is a shift in identity, power, opportunity, and the pursuit of a better life. This video will reveal the deeper truths behind this movement. You will see why big cities are becoming less livable for many Black families, why the South, once a place of escape, now represents hope, how this migration is reshaping Black economics, culture, and politics, the impact on the next generation, and the emotional journey behind a community rewriting its future. This is not a story about relocation. This is a journey of reclaiming identity, rediscovering belonging, and rebuilding the future. At first glance, many people assume Black families are leaving big cities because of high housing costs or rising crime. But once you dig deeper, you realize something far more complex and far more painful. This is not just about economics, not just about safety, not just about opportunity. This is a story about exhaustion, disillusionment, broken trust, and the slow collapse of the feeling of belonging. In this chapter, we look closely at the most powerful forces pushing Black Americans out of the major cities their families have lived in for generations. 1. Gentrification, the urban blood replacement that pushes Black families out. If there is one word that explains the exodus, it is gentrification. A process that looks like this. Old homes, demolished. Luxury apartments, built. Barbershops and soul food diners disappear. Coffee shops, gyms, and organic markets appear. Rents skyrocket. Property taxes follow. Longtime black residents priced out. Neighborhoods once filled with culture, music, identity, and community are now high-income districts for white residents, young professionals, and tech workers. A lifelong resident in Washington, D.C. said, "My neighborhood didn't change slowly. It vanished. One morning I woke up and didn't recognize the place I had lived for 40 years. As cities become nicer, black residents lose their homes. 2. Income cannot keep up with living costs. Families are squeezed tighter each year. Here's a shocking statistic. In many major cities, black income has grown 5 to 10% over a decade, while housing costs have increased 60 to 120%, which means no matter how hard you work, extra shifts, second jobs, cutting expenses, the city still slips out of your grip. A family in Los Angeles put it this way: "We're not poor, but every month feels like we're drowning a little more." No one wants to live in a constant state of suffocation. 3. Violence and the constant feeling of being unsafe. Many black families are not leaving because of crime itself, but because of the ever-present feeling of insecurity. In many neighborhoods, gunshots become background noise. Tension between community and police never heals. Kids can't play outside. Parents fear every time their child leaves the house. Stores lock products behind glass. Normal streets feel unpredictable. A mother in Philadelphia said, "I just want my kids to grow up without looking over their shoulder every time they walk outside." When a place no longer feels safe for your children's future, leaving becomes the only choice. 4. Failing schools. The next generation loses opportunity before it begins. Education is the lifeline of any community. But in many major cities, schools are underfunded. Teacher shortages are severe. Textbooks are outdated. Classrooms are overcrowded. Bullying and violence rise. Arts and sports programs are cut. Black students face low expectation. A teacher in Detroit said, "These kids are brilliant, but the system rarely gives them the chance to prove it." When parents see their children trapped in a broken system, they look for a place where education isn't a daily battle. 5. Limited advancement and invisible barriers in the workplace. Across many urban industries, banking, technology, creative fields, finance, corporate sectors, black workers face a glass ceiling, fewer promotions, few black executives, subtle bias, workplaces that feel unwelcoming. Many say that no matter how hard they work, they remain outsiders within their own companies. Meanwhile, in many southern cities, companies are more diverse. Black leadership is more common. Workplace cultures are more inclusive. Opportunities are more accessible. It makes a huge difference. 6. Mental burnout. When the city drains your spirit instead of inspiring you, this is the least spoken reason, but perhaps the most powerful. Black Americans are tired. Tired of rising costs, unstable jobs, constant pressure, being underestimated, being misunderstood, being in defense mode every day. A man in New York said, "In this city, you don't live, you just try not to get crushed." When the spirit is worn down, people search for a place where the heart can breathe again. 7. The collapse of the feeling of belonging. This is the most painful truth of all. Many Black Americans no longer feel these cities are their cities. Places where they once built cultural movements, created music and art, launched social activism, founded churches and small businesses, raised families for generations, now feel cold, distant, unrecognizable. A city that no longer embraces you, cannot hold you. And so they leave, not because they want to abandon the past, but because they can no longer find themselves in the present. The question is no longer, why are they leaving? The real question is, how could they possibly stay? Why the American South, a place once associated with pain, has suddenly become the new, promised land for Black Americans. The answer isn't only economic. It isn't only political. It isn't only about lower living costs. The answer lies in the complete transformation of the modern South. A transformation so profound it can only be described as a historic rebirth. 1. Lower cost of living. The American dream cities no longer offer. Here's a powerful truth. The cost of a one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles equals a full 3-bedroom house with a yard and garage in Atlanta or Houston. Renting in New York costs as much as owning a home in North Carolina. Taxes in Texas are so low that many Black families call it financial liberation. The South offers something major cities have lost: the chance to own, instead of rent, struggle, and survive month to month. A man who moved from New York to Georgia said, "For the first time in my life, I have a house, not an apartment. A real house. For many black families, that is the purest form of freedom." 2. Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, the new black meccas of America. It is not a coincidence that all roads point south. Atlanta, the new capital of black America. Largest concentration of black-owned businesses in the U.S., one of the biggest communities of black millionaires, a multi-billion-dollar entertainment industry. Political, cultural, and economic power merged into one force. Houston, the fastest-growing city in the nation. Affordable homes. Strong job market. Exploding black middle-class neighborhoods. Dallas, Fort Worth. New tech plus financial hub. Fastest-growing black population in the last 5 years. Charlotte, Raleigh, Orlando. Clean environment. Beautiful suburbs. Strong schools. Stable employment. These cities share one thing. Black people don't just survive. They thrive, and they belong. 3. Better job opportunities and stronger black representation in business. In the South, it's not just about having more jobs. It's about having more opportunities specifically for black Americans. More black leadership. More inclusive corporate culture. Diversity programs that actually work. HBCUs providing a strong talent pipeline. Companies actively recruiting black workers to expand markets. Most importantly, the Southern economy is growing faster than both coasts, meaning more jobs, more income, more promotion opportunities, and more pathways to build generational wealth. A young professional in Charlotte said, "I don't have to explain why I belong here. People are already used to seeing us succeed." 4. A sense of belonging that big cities have lost. In cities like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles, many black residents often feel like outsiders, marginalized, constantly judged, disconnected from the culture around them. But in the South, black communities are large. Black culture is the dominant influence. Food, music, churches, festivals, everything feels familiar. No one asks them to justify their presence. They rarely feel alone or out of place. The South offers psychological safety, cultural comfort, respect, and freedom to exist without explanation. 5. A historic homecoming, closing the circle of our ancestors. Many black Americans describe the move this way: "I'm returning to the place my grandparents were forced to leave." For many, this migration isn't just relocation. It is healing. Their ancestors fled the South because of violence, lynching, Jim Crow laws, lack of rights, lack of opportunity. Their descendants return with higher education, better income, self-determination, a belief in the future. A circle of history is closing. But this time, the return is not driven by fear. It is driven by power. 6. The rise of the black middle class, the engine of long-term stability. The black middle class is growing fastest in the South. They are buying homes, launching businesses, investing in property, placing their children in stronger schools, building new communities. When the middle class grows, the community strengthens. When the community strengthens, stability follows. And stability is something black families have been seeking for generations. The South today is not the South of 50 years ago. It is a South defined by opportunity, connection, growth, empowerment, and a proud homecoming. That is why so many black Americans are not just leaving major cities. They are choosing the South as their long-term future. If you look at the map of America in 2024, you will notice something strange. The migration arrows are no longer pointing north like they did a century ago. They are pointing the other way, back toward the South. This movement is so powerful that demographers now call it the Great Reverse Migration, a phenomenon as significant as the first Great Migration, 1916 to 1970. But this time, history is flowing in the opposite direction. To understand today's migration, we must revisit the turning of the historical wheel. 1. The first Great Migration, when black Americans fled to survive. From 1916 to 1970, over 6 million black Americans fled the South. They ran from lynchings, racial terror, Jim Crow laws, plantation exploitation, voter suppression, generational fear. They moved to Chicago, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, hoping to find freedom, even if imperfect. Those cities became centers of black culture, engines of economic opportunity, birthplaces of music, art, fashion, and political movements. But the world evolved. And so did Black America. 2. The 21st century South is a completely different world. Today's South is not the South of the Jim Crow era. It is a South defined by booming megacities, the fastest-growing economies in the country, clean, spacious suburbs, strong and thriving Black communities, thousands of rising Black-owned businesses, significant Black political representation, modern infrastructure, a culturally welcoming environment for Black Americans. This is not just change, this is transformation. 3. The data is undeniable. This is a massive movement. Demographic studies show Chicago lost over 200,000 Black residents in just a decade. Los Angeles lost nearly 30% of its Black population in 20 years. New York is seeing its largest Black population decline in modern history. Meanwhile, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, Charlotte, Raleigh, and Orlando are gaining Black residents at record rates. Atlanta alone has gained over 200,000 new Black residents in the last decade. This is not random movement. This is a unified, powerful migration with shared motivations. 4. The South feels like home, a spiritual connection beyond economics. When asked why they moved, many people answered emotionally, "I feel like I'm coming home. Here, I don't have to explain who I am. I feel closer to my ancestors." For many Black Americans, the South is not just geography. It is where their family stories began, where their ancestors were stripped of freedom, where Black culture was born, where memory and tradition live. Returning to the South feels like a homecoming, a closing of the ancestral circle. 5. For the first time in decades, Black Americans feel normal here. In major northern and western cities, many Black residents often feel like minorities, like outsiders, like they must constantly defend themselves, like they don't fully belong. But in the South, Black people are the majority or near majority. Neighborhoods reflect their culture. Churches, markets, barbershops, food, all feel familiar. Children grow up seeing people like them in every profession. For the first time in decades, Black Americans experience normalcy, visibility, respect, belonging. 6. The South is becoming the future, not the past. The most ironic and beautiful part of this migration is Black Americans are not returning to the South of the past. They are moving to a South that represents the future. Here they are, starting businesses, buying property, investing, engaging in politics, building strong communities, shaping contemporary culture, leading instead of being sidelined. Their ancestors were forced out of the South a century ago. But today, Black Americans are returning, not as refugees, but as builders and decision makers. 7. This is a movement of an entire people, not a trend among individuals. What shocks researchers most is this. Every year, tens of thousands of Black Americans leave major cities for the South, and the number is rising. This is not a fad, a temporary trend, a lifestyle experiment. This is a generational realignment, rooted in culture, economics, politics, and identity. The Great Reverse Migration is redefining where Black Americans live, where they grow, where they feel safe, where they build their future. And the most surprising part? That future is unfolding in the South, a place once synonymous with pain, but now becoming the birthplace of a new beginning.